Iran had not always been called Iran. So within the historical context and within the biblical context, Iran has had two names. One is Elam, E-L-A-M, Elam. When you see Elam being discussed, know that it's making reference to Iran. And the other one is the more prominent name for that geography, which is Persia. Persia, because it became an empire as Persia, dominating the Medes and dominating Babylon. And so bringing under its own stool, bringing under its own throne, an empire over which the sun could not set at its moment. So it had always been Elam, it had always been Persia. That's number one. Number two is that I want you to know that it once had a Jewish queen. So let that ring a bell. Iran had not always been an enemy of the Jews. Much of what we have in Iran is the bloodline of the Jews. Iran had always had a Jewish sympathy running through its veins. The DNA of Iran is meddled with Jewish blood. So within the Middle East and the entire Far East Asia, within the entire Far East Asia, the geography that captures more Jews outside of the state of Israel is the state of Iran. Always remember that. So that nation is very vital in terms of understanding historical events and current events. Remember, I said it had always been Elam, and then it had always been Persia. So when you hear Persia being discussed in terms of this series, know that we are referring to Iran. And then the second thing is that they had a Jewish queen in his history. In fact, actually, it's the grandson of that, the son of that Jewish queen who eventually became a king himself, who was trained by the mother in the Jewish culture. That was the one that preserved the messaging of the Jewish nation until it was time for this third thing I want you to note, that Iran once preserved Israel from a massacre. Iran had always been a bastion of the protection of Jews. Let that sink in. There was a prime minister who wanted to execute Jews. There was a prime minister who wanted to kill them off. There was a prime minister who wanted, in fact, the plan was so gargantuan, far beyond the plan for October 7, 2023. Everywhere was saturated, and all the governors and all the provinces had already been notified that at an XYZ moment, you're going to receive a signal, and every Jew that is within your province and within your geopolitical control, you must eliminate. So the date has been fixed, and everybody was carrying on as if nothing was going on, whereas there was a subterranean effort to eliminate the Jews. And then came a man called Mordecai. What a difference it can make when you have a praying man or someone who has intercourse with the Lord every morning, that can receive directly from the throne room and communicate to the human space what the spiritual is talking about. So he got it from God, and then he came down to discuss it with the queen. He said, do not think that because you are in the king's palace that you are going to be spared, because you are carrying the identity of the Jews. Because you will be identified as a Jewess, and then you will be eliminated. And because it was not something that the queen herself could get to the king on her own accord, she had to do what every Christian must do when you are faced with challenges, and that is to say, if I perish, I perish. It's important that what we show to the world today is not supposed to be a Christianity of convenience. It's supposed to be a Christianity of ruggedness. A Christianity that says, if I perish, I perish. A Christianity that understands that the kingdom suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. And that if you must get anything from the kingdom of darkness, if you must rescue your life, if you must change your destiny, if you must interpret your world the way it ought to be, then you must be willing to get into that arena where where darkness is holding what belongs to you and snatch it by force and take it to be yours. That's where we are now. We have quit the level of playing religion. We have gotten to that point where we must take decision. So Esther took a decision, said, I'm going to see the king willy-nilly, and if I perish, I perish. So Queen Esther said, let there be a fast across the land by all the Jews. When your life is at stake, you have to fast. Have you been booked for surgery? You have to fast. Are you going to face a panel you don't understand? You have to fast. Are there people holding meetings behind you and you do not know? You have to fast. Whatever it is, get into a fast. It helps your cause. And Esther did, and the equation changed. Iran released something that was touching. Events started changing, fitting into the pronouncement of Daniel in 2:21. He said he changes times and seasons. It had already been settled that Jews are going to be massacred. But all of a sudden, times and seasons were changed. The hunter became the hunted. The one that was primed to eliminate became the one that was eliminated. How did it work? Fasting took place, and the prophetic got fulfilled. So you see, the prophetic had already been there. And those who are practitioners within the social space have got to fit into the prophetic, and they get it right. And so the next thing I need you to understand is the fact that there is always a celebration that is called the Purim concerning this redemption from mass extinction in Iran. So I have said 4 things you must remember about Iran. Number 1, it was Elam, it was Persia. Number 2, it once had a Jewish queen. And number 3, it once preserved the state of Israel from elimination, from massacre. Number 4, there is always a celebration across centuries. It didn't start today, it didn't start this very period, it didn't start even in this millennium. It outdates this millennium and the previous millennium before it. There's always a celebration, an event that look like Halloween or something like that. They make dresses, they dress very fine the way we used to do, just like we celebrate festivals. It's called the Purim. So they celebrate the Purim to remember what Iran did for them. Iran had always been good to Israel. Number 5, Iran restored the temple. So there was a decree given by the king of Iran, excuse me, for the restoration of the temple and for the building of its walls and things like that, and for Israel to come back. I'm going to mention to you why this is important. Because it's part of the global calculus. It's part of what you must know. Iran did it the first time. And from that very moment that happened, that Iran said, let Israel go back, rebuild your temple. From that very moment, there was the clicking of the time calendar. Remember, Daniel said that from the time they will be told to go and rebuild their temple till their Messiah comes, it's a season on its own. And after Messiah is cut off, there's going to be another season of 7 weeks. Watch what is going on. I'm going to unravel within the next 3 weeks, if we will be around for the next 3 weeks. I'm going to unravel to you the mysteries of what has transpired between the time that the Messiah was cut off and now that we are engaged with the current events that are fitting into biblical times. But just note that Iran restored the temple and therefore kicked in the calculation of the global timing. This same Iran. Then, and that makes a whole lot of sense. So I need you to understand, because that pushed out the second Exodus, that is the return to the homeland. So there was an Exodus in the days of Pharaoh, and Israel had to return to where they are now, passing through Gilgal, and then they had to return to where they are now. And the partitioning of the land, and Reuben had to stay before Jordan, and the rest of them had to stay after Jordan, right where we have now. And Judah was given what you call today the West Bank. It's actually the land that belongs to Judah. Well, that's why it's called Judea and Samaria. Judea is the New Testament word for Judah. Now, what is it I want you to remember concerning all this? What I want you to remember is that there's an Exodus. When Iran, they didn't kick Israel out, they didn't kick the Jews out. They were doing the Jews a favor by giving a decree that Jews can now return to their land and then rebuild the temple. So that gave room for an Exodus. So watch out right now what is going on. Aside from the state of Israel, read my lips. The second nation that dictates global calendar is Iran. So, having understood this very context, I want you now to see that an Exodus is around the corner. What does that mean for Israel? And what does that mean for today's church? Not in terms of the replacement theology, like having the church to replace Israel. The church does not replace Israel. Israel runs on its own course. The church runs on its own course. Both of them meeting at one point. But ye are come unto Mount Zion, the city of the New Jerusalem. But both are running their own separate causes. The church does not replace Israel. However, there's something we must learn about the new Exodus that's going to happen. When it makes a transition into the new covenant, it becomes the Exodus that is the visible removal of people from the planet. And those people are those who are of what I call, or what the Bible calls, not me, the spiritual Israel. They belong to the commonwealth of Israel. The commonwealth will be raptured. So I want to talk about that Exodus within this very season, because it's been triggered. So we are getting ready for it. And one more thing about Iran, which I need you to know, is that having laid the historical pattern about how it had always been and where it is now, there is something that is mind-boggling. Iran and Israel have always been close. The largest concentration of Jews originally, in fact, within the beginning of the last century, was actually in Iran, outside the homeland. It was actually in Iran. Until 47 years ago. Please remember this number, 47. It's important in the calculation. 47 years ago, and that's the final thing I need to say. 47 years ago, a group of people who belong to a religion that is not Iran They captured the government of Iran. Iran was not originally a Muslim and Islamic state. It was 47 years ago that the mullahs seized power and turned it into an Islamic Republic. In fact, actually, the first Islamic Republic. And so every other person has got to learn from this first Islamic Republic. And then it entered into the antenna of so many radicalized people in the world that you can have an Islamic Republic everywhere. With those rules running in your own environment and insisting that it has to be so, and that the women have got to stay inside, and there have to be laws that are subjugating the people. And while the people are crying for freedom, the mullahs will say no. This is current affairs. It's not me saying it, it is what is happening on the streets of Iran. So 47 years ago, it took place. Now, there is something about that 47. The 47th president of the United States is the one that has deposed the reign of the mullahs 47 years after. Let that ring a bell. Mere coincidence? Well, too many coincidences. And when you have too many coincidences, you have a pattern. A pattern is being created. See where it's all leading to. It is him that controls times and seasons. He deposits kings and raises up others. Let it stay in your mind. So 47 against 47 to achieve the purpose of heaven is where we are at the moment. I've mentioned these 7 things you must know about Iran. And whether anybody likes the way it has happened or has been happening or not, this history is not being made in the studios of Al Jazeera. This history is not being created by the woke left of the world. Those who do not like conservatism, for instance, or those who do not like anything biblical, for instance, or those who do not like any narration that does not favor terror, this does not in any way receive its influence from them. It comes from someone that is called a he, and that he is Jehovah. He runs the world, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So make no mistake, we are right now at the nick of time when our world has dovetailed into the hands of God.